In this 20-part series, we'll be analyzing the cake scene at the end of Ant-Man 3.
All right, I'm recording, but okay, wish it was a little wider of an angle. That's fine. We're used to it. Did we? I'll just lean in here. So our inconsistent coverage of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where we feel like it.
We've never missed a movie or a show. We record one of these for every episode. Just sometimes I don't upload them.
They're too good for the public. So the end credits, the end title, revealed to me exactly what I'd been missing this whole time. It's right. Ant-Man, quANTuMANia, like the two words fit into the title, and I didn't get that. This is what you've been watching all along. It's cool. Antvengers.
You've been watching Antvengers. You've been pronouncing it wrong this whole time.
So this one has apparently been tanking. I think like it has gone lower than the Eternals, like it's Marvel's lowest rated movie or something.
Come on. The Eternals was way worse.
I have yet to see that.
The Eternals is not, I'm not saying it's a bad movie. The Eternals was definitely less interesting than this movie.
I thought this one was solidly middle of the road.
Yeah.
It is far from their worst, far from their best.
Right.
It was fine, which is where all of the Ant-Man movies have ended up for me.
Sure.
To varying degrees.
Yeah, like I would choose to watch this one over the first Ant-Man. Easily. Yes.
So, agreed. And maybe over the second, I'd have to see the second.
The second one has a lot of fun moments. The second one feels more even in tone, because the setting is the real world, and that's kind of for Ant-Man has been the thing. Like the setting, he's the guy who lives in the real world and deals with like smaller scale stuff. No pun intended. But now he's in like sci-fi magic quantum realm world, but they keep the same tone as if like in the real world, and it's like not sure. I get that Marvel has a house style and you don't want to stray from it too far. Well, look like a Marvel movie. Yeah.
But it's like Thor went sci-fi, outer space, and I think the resemblance to Guardians of the Galaxy was intentional.
Right. They kind of wanted to consolidate. This is what space looks like now with Thor.
Here, I felt like, okay, so the terrain was new. But when it comes to the alien designs and everything, like it just looked like more Guardians of the Galaxy. Like they've had such a broad palette, they've used up so much already.
Right.
They can't think of anything to differentiate.
Guardians was kind of like the explosion of designs, like you draw it, we'll make it. Right. At that point, when you have that wide of a range of diversity,
it's hard to differentiate anywhere else.
And it's also kind of hard to just keep track of what's going on. Did you catch when Kang's kind of winning at the end? There was a shot of the living houses. One of them is
holding the other one.
One of his dead brothers. I really liked the red goo guy. Yeah. Just the way he moved and ran.
Yes.
Was like the goofiest thing.
Intentionally. Unlike the other goofiest thing in the movie.
Sure. We'll get to that. Well, I mean, we talked about Sad Border. We can talk about MODOK.
He felt like he was supposed to be the Korg of this movie, though. He's just like oh, hey, man, I'm kind of ordinary in the middle of all this, and that's funny. It's unfortunately become a bit of a formula for a comic relief character, but, that's because it works.
Right, exactly. MODOK, I know he's a goofy character in the comics, and it's intentional. That's just kind of who he is, I guess. But we didn't need to see his face that much.
No.
It was every time he comes over, you're like, oh no, he's going to take his helmet off, isn't he?
And the helmet design looks more like the actual MODOK, which is honestly, it's a stylized, very angular face. And that's more acceptable because it's like this weird, it looks almost more like Boris Karloff, Frankenstein's head. And the fact that it has weird proportions and everything is more acceptable because it's not supposed to be just an ordinary human face.
Yeah.
Yeah, proportionalized with like the features way too close together.
You're not supposed to see like normal human pores and hair follicles scaled up to proportion to the size of the face. It was uncomfortable to look at when they just held on it.
Like, don't get me wrong, it was impressive how naturally they were able to make the face move with an anatomical arrangement that was never intended by nature.
It's got to be CGI, but it looks so good.
Right. it's technically well executed.
Exactly.
But
It's just, it reminded me of like on a cartoon or even like a piece of fan art, but I was thinking of like in SpongeBob or some cartoon where they'll do like a super high realistic version of the character for like a brief shot and it makes you uncomfortable and that's intentional. Or like a piece of fan art where somebody's like, here's what, Homer Simpson would look like as a real person. Like, he's not supposed to look like a real person. Take it away. Yeah, it's too much.
It's the classic Jurassic Park, Your CGI artists were too busy thinking about whether they can do a thing to stop and think about whether they should.
Exactly.
It
was like, I can't believe that actually made it all the way into the movie. That's what it was. Because it really was like that. They must have looked at it for too long and started believing it worked somehow on screen.
Or they really just intended it to be a big joke.
Right.
But I don't.
And every time he's in it, it is played as a joke, so that could be the case. But I'm not sure that the joke of it looking so real and surreal works with the joke of him being like a goofball character.
Right.
At the same time.
And it also continues this trend, the MCU trend of let's bring back a phase 1 villain, have them much goofier and funnier this time in more of the modern MCU style instead of the more serious one that they were created in. And also forget the people that they've murdered so that we can have them be more of a comedic / redeemed character. Because I mean,
he gets the classic redemption by sacrificing himself at the end.
Like, is it just me or is what's his name? Obadiah Stane, Jeff Bridges from the original Iron Man, the only villain that hasn't returned? And even then, we still got the scientist that he yelled at return as a villain in Spider-Man Far From Home. But I mean, we got Abomination back in She-Hulk.
Right.
We got Red Skull back in Infinity War and, Endgame. We got, Loki's never really left. We had the fake Mandarin come back in Shang-Chi. Justin Hammer, I believe, is going to be coming back in the upcoming Ironheart series.
Okay.
We got, which was a surprise to me. I didn't expect them to connect MODOK to that guy, but we got the villain of Ant-Man back here. Like, for phase 1 and phase 2, is there anybody besides Jeff Bridges that hasn't come back yet?
They need to bring Thanos back, and he'll just be like the goofy sidekick comic relief.
Well, they did that in
What
Marvel What If.
You're right. His appearance.
That sounds a lot like genocide. No, see, because it's random.
You're right.
Like, literally, we should check a timeline of movies. Be like, what is the farthest forward movie after the original Iron Man whose villain has not come back yet?
Yeah.
Like, they haven't brought Killmonger back yet. But
I mean,
well, I haven't actually seen Wakanda Forever, so maybe they did. I forgot. I have not watched most of
the times.
Phase 4.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was so Ant-Man. Again, continuing not only the villain redeeming trend, but the trend like we were talking about of the third act of a trilogy in which it is completely kind of isolated and standalone from the previous 2 parts. And doesn't really continue their storyline, but sets out in a new direction.
We were all hoping to learn how Scott's ex-con business was doing, and left disappointed.
It just leaves all the stuff out and kind of retcons that the place in the universe, just like Ragnarok kind of retconned Asgardian's place in the universe.
Right. It's the quantum realm is not exactly what they said.
And for some reason, when Scott went there in the first movie, and when Scott went there at the end of the second movie, and when all the Avengers went there to time travel, and when Hank rescued Janet.
What the Avengers did was like a layover at an airport. It doesn't really count as going there.
But no one ever saw any terrain. And
where was Janet when she was rescued?
She had come up out of the quantum world.
Was she trying to escape on her own, and she had somehow come up a layer?
Right.
And they met halfway.
But somehow, by accidentally shrinking, Darren made it all the way there.
And Janet did the first time.
So uncontrollable shrinking takes you there.
You can get there that way.
I guess you could say that everyone didn't shrink quite far enough, except at the end of the first Ant-Man, it seemed like he shrank down to nothingness before he returned. And
that was the void. He's got to go through the void.
But then again, even if you say that every previous movie only hit a layer on top of this or something, then you just have to ask, how did Janet get up to the layer on top of this in the last Ant-Man?
Did she have more discs, maybe?
And why did she use them
sooner? I know, it's the only explanation. She had to have been trapped for anything to work. So if she was trapped, she was still in the quantum realm, what we saw there. Maybe that was just geologically a different area, and that's why it looked different.
I guess.
She just kept walking in a straight
She
line.
had traveled into the desert.
Exactly.
Realm.
And that's why it looked... And Scott just didn't go far enough previously.
And again, we've already talked about how the quantum realm has got... It can't just be like... like Horton Hears a Who, the world on this little tiny speck, because in that case, if you as regular sized person stood even 1 millimeter, 1 inch offset from where you were standing before and shrank all the way down to subatomic size, you would practically be in a different solar system.
It's like a different galaxy.
Yeah.
So
it's a realm so vast that you would never be able to get back to the same tiny spot that you were in before.
Yeah, so it's not just a small area of our world.
Right. It's not a one-to-one comparison.
You're basically traveling through a portal to a different dimension or something.
You get small enough, and instead of being small in that physical place, you are transported to a different place entirely.
Right.
Like, all roads lead to Rome. It's like a giant funnel. Everywhere getting small in the big world leads down to the single quantum world.
Quantum realm was actually really small. And I mean...
Well, it really seems like it's
self-contained. I mean...
Like, literally all of these people... that shrank down in various different parts around the world end up in, like, I'm pretty sure that if I crashed down somewhere at random in this city, I might not ever run into you just by walking around, much less the whole world.
Bumping into people that know everybody.
Yeah.
Constantly.
Constantly. So some disbelief must definitely be suspended.
Yes, exactly.
Heavily.
It's very fantasy.
Which is what the MCU has been trending toward, which I don't mind too much. Like, leave the hard sci-fi to the hard sci-fi franchises and have more fun.
It's a comic book, no
reference to Jarella or the Hulk's time in the quantum world from the 70s, which I was hoping we would get, but no such luck.
Right. I really feel like the Hulk would be a great character for a crossover with Ant-Man, but I feel like at this point it's more likely the Hulk's son will be a crossover with Ant-Man's daughter instead. That's the way we're going.
You're setting up the Young Avengers.
Yeah, exactly.
Except at the rate these get made, the Young Avengers will be the adult Avengers by the time they get to the movie, because that is the sad thing about, even at the rate that Marvel cranks them out, it's like, look, guys, we've made 3 movies. I've done a solid trilogy and aged a decade since
I'm ready to retire.
I'm ready to retire now. Yeah. Like, that's the sad thing about all superhero movies you end up. It's like,
you can't do it. You can't.
In comics or TV shows, you get one adventure a week, one adventure a month.
Time stands still.
But in movies, it's like, nope, this superhero actually only had 3 major important things happen during their entire career. Right. And then they retired because they're an old man. Right. Yeah. An old woman. Like, there we go. New transporter effect every time.
Yeah, just like in Doctor Who. Every episode of Doctor Who.
So, back to Ant-Man and the Wasp quANTuMANia, or as it probably should have been called, Cassie and Janet and Ken quANTuMANia.
It was mostly Cassie, let's be honest. I mean, if Janet hadn't come in to save Ant-Man right at the end, I would have forgot she's in the movie. So.
Yeah. The Ant-Man and the Wasp were not in any way the most important characters of this movie. So chronologically, we start with this opening sequence, and to me it kind of hammered home how disconnected Ant-Man is from all of the other... Like, I mean, he lives across the country.
Right, exactly. Whether it's Avenger.
But it is just kind of like, he's just doing his own thing.
Yeah.
Each of these movies, no connection to Avenger. They, like, pull him in
when they really need him
in Civil War, and then he comes to them with an idea, and that's why he's part of Endgame. But for the most part, he's just kind of off doing his own thing. In some ways, the Guardians have had more mainline relevance to the rest of the universe than Ant-Man has.
Right, and in the opening, he is kind of just saying, you talk about his life is strange, and he's going about his daily business, and he's like, if the Avengers call, then I'll be there for them, and I'd like to see that. I'd like to see them just call him up and do like a quick adventure with him, and then he goes back to. That just kind of seems like they don't really want him to be in the Avengers. You know, he always kind of felt like he was only included out of necessity.
Yeah,
they were desperate.
So my question is, they don't really want him in the Avengers. His family apparently doesn't really want him to be a celebrity. Like, what does everybody want from Scott? Because it feels weird how harsh Cassian and one is being at the end. At least I'm doing something. What are you, writing a book? What's like,
yeah, that bothered me too. It's like,
what is he supposed to be doing?
Right.
And he's like, I literally saved the world. And they're like, oh yeah, that again. Like, dude, you only get to coast on that for a few months. Then you need to be back. I don't know. What do they want him to go into space?
Right, save the world again.
It's not in peril. It's fine. What do they want him to do with his life? And they seem to be trying to set up Scott has stopped really looking out to protect people, and Cassie has to remind him. But like, why? There's no problems right now for him to go solve.
They could have done something more with that. Like, show him turning away from helping somebody. Show that he's struggling to be a hero, you know?
But as it is, it just feels like,
as far as we know, he's a very selfless, heroic person who...
Right. There's no crisis going on right now, but everyone is beating him up for not being in the middle of a crisis anyway, even though there's nothing for him to do. Like, don't enjoy your life on the downtime. It's like...
Don't take... Yeah, I mean, how much time could possibly have passed after Endgame, and he's not allowed to take a break?
Yeah. Captain America went for a jog. Like, Tony Stark was still having parties. Like, people are still allowed to enjoy themselves in between.
Yeah. And like, it's one thing for Cass. Like, see, that's teenagers, you know?
Well, yeah, we gotta get out there and fix that.
But for Janet and Hank to agree with that and give him a hard time about it just seems mean.
Yeah, it really does. It's like, again, what do you want from him then? And then, again, they were laying it on in the rebel camp, but he is like, kind of rightly, we need to go find our actual loved ones that may be in danger, and we've heard that they are being hunted. And B, these people want us to get as far away from them as possible so we don't bring trouble. He's like, it's not our fight. And she's like, you know, just because it's not happening to you, it's like, but sure, when MODOK shows up, like, and start shooting everything,
then you've got a point.
But at that point, you've got literal people that you know are in distress that you're trying to go help, and other people that will be in distress if you stay. In what way is leaving the wrong thing?
I feel like that was one of those where the writer wrote in knowing what was coming and didn't think about how the characters in the moment.
Yeah. Okay, if Scott didn't want to get involved, even then, like, yeah, they're running until Cassie makes the choice to fight back.
Yeah.
But everyone's running. It's chaos. They're being blitzed from the sky. Like, that's still a reasonable reaction.
Yeah, and when they start running, why wouldn't Cassie put on her suit? Now this is like the perfect time to put on her suit.
Yeah.
I guess she was trying to hide it from her dad as long as possible, even though he already knew she had a suit because he wrote that in the car.
I thought we were going to get a big dramatic reveal, but instead 5 seconds later, no, she's just hiding and running.
Right.
It's like, okay, you could have done that when the attack started, maybe. That would have been a good plan.
Yeah.
But, and speaking of which, to jump way to the end, the big fist fight with Kang, I kept being like, why is Scott not using any of his Ant-Man powers? Why is he not shrinking or changing size?
Did he break the helmet right away? If he breaks the helmet, Kang broke his helmet, does that disable? Because he needs the helmet to shrink and grow, except when he doesn't sometimes.
Right. Yeah, maybe that's what they were going for, that disabled.
That was a rule in the first one. You need the helmet to shrink.
Okay. And maybe that's why they were like, we should be dead after they first shrank down.
Oh, yeah, because they didn't all have suits. I guess that works.
I guess I could buy that, maybe, yeah. Because that was what was bugging me. It's like, why is he just going, when it's like, no, this is what he does. In hand-to-hand fights, he shrinks down and hits the guy as an ant, and then he's over there, and then he's like, this is his whole thing. Why is he not using it then?
And then he got to have his I could do this all day moment.
Right. Sort of. And when the guy is like, you should have looked the other way, and he's like, I'm not very good at that. It seemed to be, again, trying to tie in that whole...
Right, that's his character arc.
Except it doesn't seem to be an arc because he never really was. You know?
Right. Everyone just said he was.
Right, exactly. And he said, the way he says, never been much good at that makes it sound like I never did. Which is like, a weird thing to say. Like, if it's supposed to be his arc, it should have been like, I'm not doing that anymore.
Right.
You know, but if it's like, I've never been, it's like, yeah, exactly. He's never been. He hasn't run away from it.
He's been perfect his whole life. Leave him alone.
It's so weird. It felt like they were going for something thematic.
Yeah.
The whole look out for the little guy. But it's just...
They spent a lot more time on the other parts of the writing, on the action and the witty dialogue and the snappy comebacks, and it just so much on the...
It didn't connect. It didn't make sense as a failing of this to be addressed. And even the way he says it, again, makes it sound like it's just a defense. Like, no, I was never doing that. I don't know what you guys are on about, but I don't look the other way.
Also, he's got to make a living, because Avengers apparently have a hard time getting money. Is what we're told. So having a book deal is not...
Avengers have what they intercept when they don't.
Right. As long as Tony Stark is alive.
Right.
So selling out and writing a book is not a character flaw.
Right.
Nobody should play him.
If he's writing a book at the expense of helping people, sure.
Yeah.
But again, we have no indication that he's doing that. It almost seems like, look, Thanos is gone now. You need to find another crisis to throw yourself into, or you're falling down on the job.
We're really getting hung up on the first 5 minutes of the setup. That has nothing to do with anything else. Besides the end of the movie.
It feels like it has to do with the theme they're trying to throughout. They just do it ineptly.
Yeah, the theme needed another pass or two in the script, for sure.
I did appreciate, though, jumping past to, minute 6 when they get pulled into the quantum realm. Like, they didn't waste any time. It's like, so, Coffee, I'm doing an opening monologue, which made me think, is this Spider-Man 3?
The opening was what do you call that, diegetic audio, where he's reading his it turns out he's reading book reading. He's reading his book. There's something he's written down that's not in his head.
Right.
The ending monologue is in his head. But that's exactly the same.
That's true. I wasn't thinking
about it. He wasn't
that.
writing another book at the end. It was very clear it was just his thoughts.
Yeah. No, that's a really good... I didn't think of that.
It was weird.
But yeah, I did appreciate, again, it gave me Spider-Man 3 vibes.
Yeah.
They saved it when they pulled out, oh no, he's actually reading an excerpt from his book. But then, I didn't think about it at the end, they totally broke it.
I thought that was clever that it was his book, because it kind of excuses the cheesiness and how he's just bragging about himself and everything. It's like, oh, it's funny, it's a joke. But then at the end, broke that.
But then I appreciate how it's like, oh, I'm out getting coffee, montage for people. Okay, here's the stuff I do. Then we're having dinner. Then the plot is starting.
Yeah.
Wasted no time. It's like, here's the thing I built, the MacGuffin machine, and now we've been in the quantum realm. Let's go.
You get 5 minutes on real sets, and now it's green screen time.
Forever.
For 1 hour and 30 minutes.
Yeah. Must have been such a boring movie to film. Like I said, the first reveal of MODOK, when they're surrounded by smoke, is like, this must have been fun. They probably got this film on an actual set.
Well, it was still a green screen. They just got a smoke machine in there. It's part of the green screen. All right, so we get into the quantum realm, and I'm going to jump ahead to the end real quick, but it's a thing in Marvel movies. People complain about there not being enough consequences, and it's hard sometimes to grasp the consequences. If the whole universe is going to end.
Actually, it's like a body count to this one.
Yeah, it's hard to grasp the consequences when the quantum realm is what's at stake. And it's hard to grasp the abstract concept of Kang potentially conquering everything. I wish they had gone into the real world for the final fight. I wish Kang hadn't been defeated at all. But I get it. They want to show that no matter how many Kangs you defeat, they want to set that concept. He can be defeated and will come back. It doesn't matter.
Right.
You can kill him. So they have to do it at least once. That's fine. It just did feel a little easy, but I wish they'd done the fight in the real world so that I cared a little bit more about what was going on. I like the fist fight with Scott, but Kang fighting the ants, there was no weight on that whatsoever.
Well, no. And it felt a little silly that they were overwhelming him and threatening to destroy him when Scott literally picked him up and slammed him against the building several times. It's did nothing. I doubt that the ants are mustering more kinetic.
How did they break his armor if Scott couldn't break his armor?
That was
But the power level of Scott's,
they have a technology, so maybe their technology
they're
is
type 2 civilization.
Yeah,
on whatever scale.
I will say one thing about the quantum realm I appreciated. They kind of toned down the weirdness, except for the inhabitants after the first few minutes. I did like the amoeboid multiplying predators at the beginning.
Yeah.
And that sort of porous sky that looked like it was tunnels out to somewhere.
Yeah, you kind of see that
And it was a little Van Gogh kind of starry night.
Right, it's kind of swirly, and that gives you the feeling that you are small and you're down somewhere small looking up at stuff that's big.
Yeah. And I did like the giant protoplasm, like, amoeba.
Yeah.
Although, again, after that was killed, they didn't do anything with that. But it kind of raises questions about, wait, what is the relationship between this and the microscopic?
I don't think that was supposed to be a microscopic like amoeba necessarily, just something that was similar to the amoeba.
It looks like one in design enough that to me it felt like it was almost supposed to be scale setting, and that just raises more questions.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then it makes it feel like, oh, this is just a really tiny spot of ground either of Hank's basement. So,
being right at the start, it's confusing,
right,
as a design choice.
Yeah. It muddies the concept of alternate realm that, again, all roads lead to funnel down into one quantum realm that is not tied to any specific place. When you see an amoeba, you're like, oh, this is really tiny. This must be a specific place.
And in the dialogue, they specifically say the quantum realm is a place outside of space and time.
Right.
Outside of space and time.
But when you have something that looks like a microscopic organism that's really big, that seems to tie it to space.
But you've got you got people that look like people. You got things that look like humans. So why not? Yeah. Yeah.
And again, if she talks about world within worlds, maybe it's just a scale thing, because, like, in theory, and you could go really far with this, but, like, their bodies have been compressed down to subatomic size. But what does that mean for the subatomic particles in their bodies? Like, their blood cells are now subatomic.
But I propose that once you get to the quantum realm, it's a hard reset. You are now at normal size once again. You've traveled through the portal. You're at normal size. All the rules reset.
Yeah.
So that means you could delve into a second quantum realm.
Right. A quantum realm within the quantum realm. Maybe that is the world within the world.
Quantum. Right. Exactly. And then that's another question I thought, like, there's no rule in the real world about how small you can go, because eventually you go to the quantum realm, but is there a hard limit on how small you can go in the quantum realm?
Yeah.
When you just can't.
Which almost seemed like in the first movie he went beyond.
Right.
Because he was kind of flying past things that looked like landscapes.
He was flying past, the abstract, which
you could say he actually passed the quantum realm.
And then he went into, like, the black void. And then I guess they're kind of retconning that's the point you have to pass you have to go through the void.
I guess, but you could almost say that was the quantum realm, and if you went into the void, then you would get into if you shrunk beyond the quantum realm. Like, he bypassed it in that one and then managed to come back.
Right.
But I don't know.
Don't expect them to ever clarify.
No. But I did like some of those design touches, and like how gravity was weird. You could just go over the side, and now you were reoriented to that. Doesn't need enough flying thing. Like, there were some nice design touches at first, but after we'd been in the quantum, like, by the time they got to the bar, the quantum realm was basically just another planet of Guardians.
Right, exactly.
They didn't have it.
No weird
any stuff.
Right. And there were a few other things. There was a shot where something was on fire, but the fire looked kind of like a liquid bubbling up. But it was like, oh, it's kind of cool. Microscopic fire works differently, and like liquids kind of work differently, except when you order them at the bar, they look like a normal drink. So
also, okay, so translator liquid, is that that's also what they did in John Carter.
Okay, yep,
with the blood of Barsoom.
Yep.
The movie version, obviously, it takes some liberties with the book. That's just kind of a trope. But they said they were drinking part of that guy.
Right.
And they didn't explain anything beyond that.
Right.
So what was it they were drinking at the bar? Is that guy a collective organism that's all throughout the realm?
Presumably he's a species. We have to assume that most of these are representative of a whole species.
Right.
So his species is like cattle to these people.
Yeah. They milk them? Like, I don't know.
Is this voluntary?
And also, that just reminds me of what you were saying about the final fight not taking place in the real world. In that this is what I complained about when I was saying that Tron Legacy bothered me, because it felt like they didn't capitalize on any of the being in a computer aspects of it. Like, you could say this didn't capitalize much on the being microscopic aspect of it. But the ending was just something that we've seen so often in sci-fi, which is you're on another planet having a fight where the bad guy has his invasion force marshal to try and stop him from leading it through the portal back to Earth. And that was the end of Tron Legacy. Yeah. That was the end of this movie. That's been the end of so many sci-fi movies since the dawn of sci-fi. And it's just such a generic thing because that's just the thing. You could be in the digital world. You could be in the subatomic world. You could be on a different planet. And it doesn't matter because it's just the generic fight to keep the villain from leading his army through a portal thing. Right. And that's always disappointing because it feels like when you're in such a different setting, you should do something that is specific and unique to that setting for the climax instead of something generic that could happen in any setting.
It's just stop the bad guy from getting across the nice, clean threshold. If he passes the threshold, he wins. If he doesn't, he loses.
Right. And there's weird technology at play, but otherwise everything is perfectly normal.
Yeah.
And there are just humans everywhere. And, there's no altered physics. There's no high concept stuff. It's just you're in a place that's not your place with a portal back to your place and a bad guy that wants to lead an army of foot soldiers and ships through the portal. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's kind of the Avengers too, but at least there you were having a big sky fight. And it's at least they were on the other side of the portal fighting them coming through.
Right. And like that does hold more weight, I feel like, when you're watching it, that it's a threat to a familiar place, New York City. Since they're already across, like, it's really just harder to feel emotional about them potentially being a threat.
And I suspect the reason they didn't do it here is because that's what they're saving for the Avengers.
Yeah, they don't want King to get to Earth before the real show.
It's just it's too much of a trope, and there's just nothing quantum about it.
Yeah, as Marvel Final Place go, these are being ranked pretty low, I think.
They do a bunch of stuff to him that does nothing to him. Yeah. Then a bunch of ants defeat him instantly. Then you just have a fist fight where most of your powers have been destroyed.
Yeah, and I was getting excited because they show King being so powerful. He can he stop you just by pointing at it. Right? He has stronger kinetic powers than those three.
He's Kylo Ren.
Sure.
The Force freezing, the Force
wants to make him sound lame. Yes.
Yes. Well, I do. Because I think that, he demonstrated a lame level of. But that's basically the exact same force powers they gave it.
Right.
Force freezing.
He could toss something. He could stop her.
Right. He hover bullets in the air.
He seems to be so omnipotent in what he can do to his immediate surroundings, and then all of a sudden he starts getting beaten.
He's 100% invincible. Then he's 0% invincible. Now he's just a regular guy in a punch. Right. Like, it's uneven and not satisfying.
They needed something more clever for the heroes to do to fight him, even if it wasn't. Even you could still end up in the same place. The final thing with Scott fighting him is fine because his suit's broken. Just how do you get to that point of his suit being broken? Have the heroes come up with a clever plan to get to that point instead of it being almost an accident.
Yeah, the ants came up with a clever plan and let the superheroes know about.
Why isn't this movie called Ant-Man? Oh wait.
Yeah. Well, it's Ant-Man, except Ant-Man doesn't have anything to do with the ants.
Right.
Only Ant-Man does. But even then, it's not him doing it. It's the ants doing it.
Right.
They're the
true heroes.
They're the ones with the agency. Like, Ant-Man does nothing to actually create, motivate, or equip the ant solution.
Yeah.
He's just up there for the ride, as the ants do everything.
Yeah. And the ants got there entirely by accident.
Yeah,
and even got to their intelligence level by accident. Like Hank didn't intend that.
Right. They came to their own intelligence. Yeah. They came up with their own plan. They executed it. Everyone else was just there.
The ants are the true heroes.
The ants are the true heroes, just like in real life.
Are we going to see Ant-Man 4 focus entirely on the ants?
I'm down for it.
Fighting the army of Kangs. It'll just be 2 hours of CG ants fighting Kang clones.
Oh gosh.
With no dialogue.
With no dialogue. Speaking of no dialogue, is it just me, or did it get exceptionally annoying Janet not explaining? Like, when they were flying on the Thran...
There's no time to explain.
Right. Now let's have a 10-minute flight over landscapes where we could be talking.
You gotta knock it up about to the very start of the movie. Mom, you never told us about what happened down in the quantum realm. You never said it. You just never want to talk about it.
Right.
It's just staring and tight-lipped. Don't want to say anything.
Then we turn out there.
She turns on the device. Turn that device off. Why, Mom? Why? Tell us why. Zaps it. Turns it off. what was that about? Explain what happened.
Right.
No, I don't want to talk about it.
Then they get down there and there's a blue scanning beam. There's no time to explain. We gotta leave. We gotta go. Then they meet up with the caravan, but time has apparently passed and she did not explain during the trip.
It's like the inverse of people having a conversation, time jump to later in their travels, and they pick up mid-sentence in the conversation. Right. It's the opposite of that time jump. No conversation has passed.
Right.
Yeah.
Then I did like the part with her, like with the knife with the protoplasm gun, and he just puts it out. But again, it being an old friend is stretching it. Like I said,
and that's another cliche. Like, two characters, you think that they're gonna fight. She goes up to face the guy, and it turns out that they're old friends.
Which I knew he was her old friend from the moment she stepped. So from the moment she said, "I'll handle this,"
and but in that situation, this character who this is with her husband and daughter has no reason not to turn to them and be like, "It's okay, I know them."
Right.
You know,
and let's also mention that again. If I got dropped in the middle of this city, even if I got dropped down in the middle of randomly 5 blocks away, I could walk for weeks and never run into you.
Right.
But she is this entire realm
only runs into relevant people.
Only runs into people she knows. Yeah. And let's not forget how convenient it is that for Scott, he was in there for 5 years, but it was like 5 hours because
time was actually for 5. But no, for him it was like 5 hours.
5 hours.
But he was floating. We saw him.
Right. He was.
That was at the corner room. Was a layer above.
Right. The same place that the Avengers go through a time travel. But here, she was here for 30 years, and for her it was 30 years, and then she came back out for like a couple of years, and for them it was a couple of years. Like,
and to be fair, in the movie, there's a throwaway line where somebody's, I forget even who, says, time we're simply here, we could have been down here 500 years back or something. It's like, okay, it works any way you want.
Right.
Time passes various different ways.
Right. And which is very much the way they portrayed it. It's whatever you want it to be. But I'm just saying, why is everything with Janet never gets out of sync?
She's the touch point with the
Does her mystery powers that she used to heal ghosts at the end of May that keep her tethered to in temporal sync with
which are never seen again, and now she has karate instead, which is fair since she was the Wasp, I suppose. But
it's just one of those things where why conveniently did time always stay 1-to-1 in sync with her when she was here, when she was absent, when she was here again, always, and even when they go back to the garage 5 minutes, for them it's 5 minutes, like. Time being out of sync is not a thing in this movie, even though it was the crux of the last time we were here.
No, because that's what the plot needs.
I guess. It just feels very convenient that it's not like Narnia, where it's like, 1,000 years ago.
You could have told the same story, but it almost would have been interesting if she goes back and King's been there for 1,000 years.
Right.
And also it would have been more of an impact, like, he built this army. Because he's been here so long, he's been working on this. So it brings it more weight, I feel like.
Yeah.
Instead of him being just, you built this in 5 minutes. Or a year since she last saw him or whatever. You know.
But the other thing is just, it gets annoying because they keep being like, he's looking for her. They're wanted by him.
He must not be spoken of.
And they do that about 5 times too many. Yeah. Especially because, look. We've seen the trailers. Anyone who's watched Loki knows that this is Kang. Anyone who's read a synopsis knows that this is Kang.
Right.
This isn't a surprise, but they keep doing it, and it becomes so pretentious that it's like, I get that you're saving this for a big reveal, but there are about 5 different times that Janet and them are just walking that she could explain even the slightest semblance of what's going on. There's times in the rebel camp where they could explain what's going on to Scott and Cassie, knowing that they have no idea what's going on, and keep talking to them like they did, like, you've led them right to us. Like, well, maybe if anyone told us what's going on, we could have prevented that.
Yeah.
But they keep pulling it off for way too long through the movie.
It was at least one mention, too.
I would say at least 5. Like, it happens so often.
And is there like they're scared? This wasn't a situation where they're just scared to use the real name.
Right.
They do that. Like,
they hold it off till a point that is convenient for them in the movie, but there have been way too many points they have shown us on screen that it would be convenient for the characters to explain to the other characters.
Exactly, and that's what,
there's no reason for her to leave them completely clueless until after Bill Murray, when some knowledge of what their situation was might have helped them navigate all of this. But moving past that, which was a big sticking point for like the first half of the movie.
Oh, did it bother you?
Just a little. I mean, we basically got they get to Coruscant, and then go into the bar.
It's more like it's a Mos Eisley Coruscant mix.
Yeah, I'm just saying visually, it looks extremely Coruscant with the
First, they go through Coruscant. They go through Coruscant. They go in the secret door, and then they're in Mos Eisley.
And it was weird how it's like this big cavernous space, and then I guess that was like the wall of the cavernous space because suddenly they go through my Portland. It's a totally different.
Because I had it was nighttime when they landed at Coruscant. And they got off the flying creature, it looked like it was nighttime. I didn't understand that they were supposed to be indoors, basically. And just really big indoors, because they're so spacious. So I thought when they got to the door, she opened it and we saw sunlight. I was like, oh, this is interesting. It's like nighttime on this side, daytime on that side.
Yeah.
Then they don't do
But apparently, no, it was just an interior place and they crossed through the bulkhead to a balcony.
That wasn't visually communicated.
But okay, I will admit that I did not think of this until now, so it falls under the category of Fitch logic.
Okay.
But what is the sun of the quantum realm?
And why is it always coming from the same direction?
Right. And, okay, you could say you're not meant to ask that, but then why do they specifically call attention to the creature that casting mistakes from the sun? It begs the question.
The light was coming from that creature, and then the creature gets thrown away, and the light is still coming. So where's the light coming from?
Right.
And when you do see the sky, I guess you kind of see like light shining through all these like
the
vibrant tunnely things. So I guess that's light from the real world.
But the quantum realm is outside of time and space.
But light is outside of time and space.
Yeah,
it can travel anywhere. Sure.
Where do those?
I don't know.
Where do those tunnels lead to if this is outside of time and space? But also time still passes, so it's not outside of time. It's outside of time.
Well,
your time.
It was suggested when Loki, the first season of Loki was on, that the TVA probably exists in the quantum realm somewhere, and I could buy that now that they've kind of better established, because that would
honestly the city that you see outside the window, at the end looks very similar, to this city here with the pod design on top of. So maybe,
in a different location. Although, here's the thing.
Although that's just Canon's architectural style, so we could build that wherever it happens.
But that's fair. But here's the thing. If the TVA is in the quantum realm, all the events of any movie that happens prior to Loki, there's only the one surviving king who's the guy at the end of time that can be in Loki. All the other kings are dead. He's made sure of that. He's trimmed all the timelines.
Right.
So the king in the quantum realm wasn't in the quantum realm in that timeline. So, did Ant-Man 2 happen after Loki and Sylvia killed that guy? Because Janet went back there and met this king.
But I was under the impression that the one true timeline which the MCU movies take place in is a comprehensive timeline, so whatever is going to have happened afterwards still happens. Do you know what I mean? So it almost feels like post Loki events that travel into the past would still have existed in this.
Sure. Yes, right. Because I see what you're saying, and that's true. So what I'm saying is there a version of Ant-Man 2 and 3 where Janet goes back, or is there a version of Janet that went back to the quantum realm?
Change that happened in
they got rescued, and none of this happened.
Quantum realm for
and this is happening
Ant-Man 1 and
now
2.
because
Which would have placed in the prior that conquered some, and now this takes place while quantum realm. That's why the neurotic came through and retroactively changed not just the present, but past incursions, so that the past of the universe is also changed theory.
Yes.
Happening in Ant-Man.
We solved it.
The real answer is they just didn't think it through. We're putting too much thought to this, and it doesn't fit.
Yeah.
It
only has to work well enough for the story they're telling.
Yeah.
I do appreciate that they used the exact same effects to show the timelines that they used in Loki.
Yeah. Even did the stupid pointless actor couldn't see with the Loki.
Yes.
That doesn't make sense.
No, all right, so post-credit scene, we see Loki and Owen Wilson, real Owen Wilson, not the character he plays, at a show in the 1800s, thereabouts, watching a king who has apparently traveled back in time. And then Loki's like, that's him. And Owen Wilson doesn't recognize Kang. And he's saying because though last time we saw Owen Wilson, it was an Owen Wilson who would recognize Kang because it's an Owen Wilson that worked for Kang.
Right. Yeah, there's literally a Statue of Liberty size statue of him. So right next to where he's
what I'm proposing is this is a scene lifted from season 2, similar to how there was a scene lifted from Civil War at the end of a different Marvel movie previously. So this is just taken out of context. What's going to happen is season 2 of Loki, he's not going to work with that Owen Wilson or those TVA people because they work for Kang and they're bad. He's going to run away from them. He's going to find a variant of Owen Wilson who doesn't know Kang and work with that guy.
Right. Closer to the one we saw from season 1, and that's who we're seeing here.
That's who we're seeing.
That is the literally only possible way that could make any sense.
Completely out of context, and they included it because it's like it's another way. They're showing hey, Kang's gonna be in season 2 of Loki,
and as if you couldn't figure it out from the end of season 1 of Loki.
And then the tag at the end, Kang will return, like the biggest no duh.
We literally saw 1,000 of him in a stadium. Of course he's gonna return.
Yeah, it's like, why not? Cassie will return, or Loki will return, or
MODOK will return. Please don't.
Did we talk about MODOK
in the
recording?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. It's just every time he showed up,
every time he showed up, you laugh, like literally. I could hear you laugh every time you saw it.
It was so goofy, and every time I knew immediately he's gonna take the helmet off, and it's gonna look goofy again.
And they did the whole.
They just kept doing it.
They did the whole we're embarrassed of the source material thing, where the helmet looks like MODOK actually looks like, but the face looks like their new version. But in this case, the comic book source version looked better.
It's like a terrible comedy sketch that they know is bad, and so they keep pushing it and keep doing it until you laugh at it because of how ridiculous it is. They can't stop.
Yeah. The sheer absurdity and audacity of repeatedly.
Right. When it becomes funny.
I get that it's not like they're saying, oh, it's fine, you're a good guy or anything.
Right.
But they do just sort of be like, don't be a jerk. Except they don't use the word jerk. And then he's like, I'm not, and I'm kind of sad you're dying, maybe. But it's like, you do remember this guy like murdered someone, right? Yeah. Like, he was a psychopathic, amoral murderer.
Now, was it his fault, though, or was it society? No, I mean, the drugs he was on. Though they actually said that in the first Ant-Man movie that he was becoming psychotic because of exposure to using like an unsafe suit or something.
Did they?
It was something along those lines. Like, that's why he went from being just a cool businessman, like a cutthroat businessman, to literally cutting people's throats. You know, like it wasn't because he was always like gonna murder. He was becoming an inch due to the technology. And
okay, I can accept that.
But that doesn't absolve him of responsibility. It's just.
You could say he's not that guy.
Yeah, exactly. You could say, like, yeah, there's a chance for redemption there.
Right, there's a chance for redemption when he was literally under a mind-altering. Look, he's got a better excuse than Darth Vader. So we can accept that extension.
Exactly. Yeah, and I do, and again, like, it's, at the end, he's like, I just am glad I got to be an Avenger, and they just let him believe it, and it's like, and it's a joke, and it's written like a joke, and I don't know, it's like, it's so weird. It's such a weird joke.
It is. Well, yeah. The part where it's like, you were always a brother to me. And everything. It's like, it is funny just because it's like, he's so delusional.
Right.
But it's also completely disconnected from anything that came before.
It's just the absurdity of it. And it's like the writers knew how absurd and out of place it was in the MCU or in this movie.
Yeah.
And they left it in because they thought it was funny.
And to be fair, it was funny.
Yeah.
Like,
it's a level of, like, self-aware comedy that I wasn't ready for.
Right. It was, yeah. There was some weirdness.
Yeah.
I couldn't expect, I don't know, like, at the very end, where he takes a bite of the cake and the joke is just that the Baskin-Robbins guy is terrible.
He's not only bad at that
decorating, but baking it as well. But I just kept, like, with the music and the way they left it, expecting, like, I don't know, Ken to re-enlarge and make his head explode for, like, there was some very ominous vibes for that.
Especially right before that when he's, like, doing his internal monologue. And it's like, oh, no, King's gonna come back and the music's building, and then you go to that scene.
Right. And there's just things that are very unsettling about the end where you expect something really bad is about to happen right then, like an explosion, or the cake is going to burst out or something with some cliffhanger.
Right.
And it doesn't. And maybe that was intentionally a joke, or maybe they just miscalculated.
Somebody take that scene, freeze frame the end, have his head explode.
Right.
And King come out.
Could just be sticking halfway out like he was with Howard Swiss at the end. But it was just like, I couldn't tell whether you were intended to be uncomfortable and be like, what's going to happen? And then it was undercut with a joke. The cake was bad, which at first I didn't even understand what was going on.
Right.
It took 3 or 4 seconds. The credits should be like, oh, I get it. It was because the cake was bad.
Right, and it also...
Or whether you were supposed to have forgotten your unease and it was just supposed to be, happy ending, but joke, the cake was bad.
Because you do forget for a second about the cake joke. You forget that that's the cake, because he does other stuff. He goes about his day, he brings the cake, they sit down, they're all happy family. He gets the cake out. They don't show the cake again. Right. They don't show that it's terribly decorated, so you forget.
Right.
Yeah.
I just don't get whether that ending shot you were supposed to be dreading something happening and they undercut it, or whether the end shot you were supposed to be like everything is fine and they miscalculated how much the dread was going to linger up to that point. You know what I mean?
I think it was
I'm just not sure.
Editing decision I got through.
Yeah. Well, I just don't understand, though, which was the director's intention for you.
I don't think that the director intended you to think something actually bad was going to happen. I think it was just a...
But was it just me that you got that vibe, like worrying something bad was going to happen?
No, there was a vibe that something was going to happen and it wasn't just going to cut.
Right.
The credits, definitely.
And so it did happen, either the cake was bad,
right,
but it felt like it was an intentional... I just couldn't tell whether it was an intentional joke, like, what bad is going to happen? Oh, it's just bad cake, that's all. Or whether it's just supposed to be like, that you weren't supposed to be wondering what bad thing was going to happen, but you just were because of how they left off that
right. Oh, I see what you're saying.
Like, was that intended to be the joke that it seems ominous, but it's just bad tasting food? Or was it just supposed to be bad tasting food is the punchline of the movie, but you weren't supposed to be expecting something bad to happen?
And in this 20-part series, we'll be analyzing the cake scene at the end of Ant-Man 3.
Well, is that what we do? We go too deep into things.
And what do you think the moral
of the cake scene?
So the idea
that
that this 20-year employee, his manager, Baskin-Robbins, could make a cake so terrible. Is this a commentary on people getting stuck in dead-end jobs?
They did the Baskin-Robbins joke like 5 times.
Yeah.
Is that from a previous movie? Or just a weird thing?
You don't remember the product placement? That's the one thing you're supposed to remember. They wasted their money. In Ant-Man 2, and I don't even remember if it was Ant-Man 1 or 2 now. Okay, so Ant-Man 1, he gets out of jail. Does he go and try to get a job at Baskin-Robbins right away? Is that what happened?
Does he? I thought he just immediately gets approached to go break into heads.
No, I think he has to fail at civilian life first, at life from the outside. He gets out of jail, he tries to get a job at Baskin-Robbins, they're like, your next con, I'm not going to hire, or they find out his next con after the hiring, and it's like, you're fired. And it's the same boss. It was like a meme. Baskin-Robbins always finds out. That's what he said. He's like, we found the con, and it's the Baskin-Robbins. It was like a big meme. Way back in 2015 when that movie came out. So it's one of those, it's like an old meme that they thought that they could reference it. And I remembered it.
Yeah.
And there was a couple that do it in the second movie. There was Baskin-Robbins' second movie. So it's a running gag.
I guess I just haven't watched it.
They must be paying them still because it was in here a lot. There were multiple Baskin-Robbins things in this.
So the probability store was an interesting idea. And
yes,
it's very much like the TNG episode Parallels. Every decision makes a different quantum reality.
Right.
For the quantum realm.
Up a little bit because it's literally like the decision to blink or the decision to step to the left.
That's what I was seeing. I loved it as he was running. there was just a whole bunch of him that was popping his helmet closed. And it's like, each time he could have popped his helmet closed was a different, and I thought that was a very clever visual gag. It's like, I'm running over, I could do it now, I could do it now, I could do it now. Okay, now I'm going to do it. Each of those is a different stuff.
That's like in that type of stuff, like you're saying, you parallels in Star Trek, TNG episode parallels, you do have to, you tend to like overanalyze these, where it's like, okay, so what counts as different? What actually makes a different universe? What are they counting in this? So it was a good way to communicate. We're trying to count everything. We can't literally count
but it's
everything.
like, with each step you take, if that's the one you decide to close the helmet, that is that guy.
But for the purposes of the story, that's what we're trying to.
Right. And that was very, I thought that was one of the most elegant visual communications of a very abstract concept that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But while the Baskin-Robbins guy was funny, all of those things seem to be branching off from where Scott arrived. He seems to be a guy from a totally different, something different happened way before he entered the quantum storm, but everything else we're seeing is a result. So how can a Baskin-Robbins be the result of one of the decisions he made in the quantum storm?
All right.
It was
let's overanalyze this. So at the end of one of those chains, 20 or 30 so steps away after he's entered here, one of the Ant-Man decides to use one of the growing discs he has in his pocket to go up to the real world. He ends up in a parallel universe where Scott never got caught at Baskin-Robbins. He continues to work at Baskin-Robbins, never becomes Ant-Man. And that guy accidentally activates one of the discs, shrinks back down.
Or Scott always keeps either miniaturized or full-size his Baskin-Robbins uniform with him at all times as a memento. And this was just the guy who decided
he's like, this is my way out. I'm going to pretend I'm a different Scott.
Yeah, that is my theory. The only way this works is if Scott has it with him at all times, and this was just the guy that decided to turn it on.
Like, the long con Scott, he's had this plan in his head for years. Eventually, I'm going to just pretend I work at Baskin-Robbins. It's my way out of this life.
Yeah.
And there was a chain of decisions that led to that.
Maybe that is applicable at this moment for some reason.
Exactly.
Maybe now's the time to use that.
Yeah. So now let's analyze the previous two movies and see if we can pinpoint where he came up with this plan and like the steps that he took to make it.
Yeah, because it has to have been miniaturized.
Right.
It has to have been.
He had it for all three movies.
So, but it has to have been. He went back for it after he was let go and got shrinking technology. So,
that's true. No, well, he could have stolen the uniform when he got fired. He just never gave it back.
It's true.
And took it home and then shrunk it.
And when he became a superhero, shrunk it to keep from getting caught and getting in other trouble to cover his tracks. Mm-hmm. Maybe he even had it with him during his house arrest after Civil War as part of his plan. If he ever escaped, this was his disguise.
Right, exactly.
To go incognito.
Nobody suspects the Baskin-Robbins people.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything else up to the point of the quantum storm worth talking. I mean, we already talked about how Kang is basically using his powers a lot more like, honestly, Snoke and Kylo Ren did. It's a much more... sequel trilogy version of Force powers.
But it felt very clean and controlled, like in a way that Force powers never do. In Force powers, it's like you gotta put some effort into it. You're never completely in control of it, and you get that, especially with Kylo Ren. But this, I liked how powerful he felt because it was like he was just a snap of his fingers,
and I'm
controlling.
Assuming that just is supposed to be like 32nd century technology.
Oh yeah, because Kenny's just a guy.
Because he's just a guy.
Just a guy, and he's just a buff guy in a suit.
Right. So. And I also assume that suit must have a lot of kinetic protection from this not affecting him.
Yeah. Yes, but ants.
But ants bypass that.
Yes.
They're like yellow for the Green Lantern.
It's not ant.
It's not ant-proof. Because ants have all been wiped out by the 52nd century.
Right.
They've paved over the planet like a Coruscant kind of thing. Ants have all died out, and people are asleep underground.
As you would, stop building
ant protection
into your technology like we do today.
Exactly.
Right.
It's a forgotten skill that has fallen off.
Right. It's like losing immunity to dead diseases.
It's like the aliens at the end of War of the Worlds show upgrade to the germs, just like there is no immunity to ants in the 52nd century. Yeah. They've lost it. It's been bred out of their...
Right, and they don't have their vaccines.
Well, you didn't want me to get political. Now we're talking about ant vaccines. Let's get one up in
I
arms.
get on board with the ant vaccine.
Wait. So would you be an ant vaccine anti-vaxxer?
I'm not
An anti-vax?
I'm pro ant-vax.
Right. That's not confusing at all. He just seems to have a lot of things built into his.
Oh yeah, and
He has lasers,
some limited
armor, telekinesis.
Well, palm blasts,
Yes.
beams.
All makes his eyes glow.
Well, you gotta have the classic eyes,
Right. Which I did appreciate that they did that. But just like, what does that have to do with his hand?
Well, that's the energy flowing.
And I'm guessing that the blue thing coming over his face, again, I know, it's just, it's a shield, but it seems like it's maybe skin tight from certain angles.
Yes.
It's hard to tell.
It almost looked just like there was just a flashlight shining on his face. Like,
Right.
even like that's what because there was a emitter at the top, an emitter shining it down.
Right.
And you know what? Anything to get away from nanotech helmets that go.
Yes.
So I'm okay with flashlight masks. I'm okay with MODOKs being like a big thing.
A big helmet.
I like that. I'm so sick of it. I guess after Tony died, they auctioned off his nanotech to Hank. So Kane's depiction, I loved. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
It's a great modern, like, visual take on his armor, on his like appearance and how he acts and everything. And he is just a guy from the future. He's got advanced technology. He has limited control over time, even just with his suit.
He's basically evil Booster Gold.
Yeah.
Who is basically just like, yeah, no, I just have a suit full of future technology, and that's the only thing that puts me in the world of superheroes.
Right.
Like, he's basically the anti-Booster Gold in this.
Is Booster Gold Marvel? I think
No, he's DC.
Oh, okay.
He's part of the Justice League, and he's like a janitor in the 52nd century that decided to steal a bunch of commonplace tech to come back and be a superhero in the 20th century.
Do you think I could steal or buy enough technology now to be a superhero in like 1200?
You know what? If you were like a super healer, maybe.
Sure.
Right.
Okay, so that can be one power. That counts. It's a power.
Bring back modern medicine.
Penicillin, yeah, modern medicine.
You could, if you had a gun, maybe.
You could reasonably, I feel like, get a weapon that could give you that
Limited ammunition. But
sure, as long as you're careful, you can.
Kevlar. I don't know if Kevlar would actually help against swords and spears.
No, I think it would. I think it would actually be an improvement over. I mean, obviously, way more mobility, and I think it is generally stat proof. So I think you'd actually have an advantage there, but you would still only be as physically strong. It's not like it's power.
Yeah.
You know?
If you had a drone that you could like mass distance, you could kill familiar.
Right, you could be like.
Which is basically what they did with Falcon and Redbird.
Yeah, you could have that as your power. So yeah, you might be almost a Batman of sorts.
Yeah. You're not going to be like...
You're not going to be Iron Man, you could be Batman, maybe.
Right. You're definitely not going to be shooting energy blasts or being comparable.
Right.
But
don't just you wait, in 1,000 years you could buy energy blasts at Walmart.
Right, exactly. Well, that's the idea, right? It's scales. But you could be a moderately decent superhero in medieval times.
Like, I mean, ignoring the fact that you would probably get sick and die from drinking the water immediately. But
bottled water is another of your superpowers. You bring it back with you.
That is funny that, like, it's like in the future they have events that go and cure all diseases. And somebody could come back in time and they'd be fine because they're not going to get sick off our pathogens. But we can't do that. We don't have the technology for us to go back to the past and be immune from those diseases.
You know what else we could do? You could get the functional jetpack that they actually made in like the 50s or 60s that uses like
burn your legs
water pressure or whatever.
Okay,
like the one they use,
like a water
that did and the Thunderbolt. Yeah, it's okay. Practical.
Yeah, I think those still exist. Like you could do that at like an amusement park, right?
Right. So, but you can take that back to medieval times, and again,
you're a witch.
You're a witch. Exactly.
Yeah. You could fly over any body of water.
There are all kinds of those novelty things, like the car that can transform into a plane that they created in the 50s, but aren't more modernly used.
Right.
But they actually get you a lot closer to the superhero than off the shelf stuff today.
Don't limit yourself to portable technology. You could definitely get a lot closer. Yeah.
So Kang's suit is just a Deus Ex Machina. Sure. I will say, Kang himself, I did like how powerful he was until the ants nerfed him. I was not very excited about this phase. Still really am not. Because Kang is just set up as this... Well, again, I knew that nothing was going to happen to permanently stop Kang in this movie because Avengers House of Kang is coming.
And that's kind of why I'm saying, like, everybody knows that. Obviously. It's not a secret, so why have him defeated? You know, like, if we all know he's coming back, why not make him keep winning?
Right.
Then he's a bigger threat when he keeps coming back.
Well, we know now that he can be beat up by an army of ants. And they have the technology to enlarge ants. Right. So, what's
the end game of trying to fight?
Right.
Kang? Yeah.
Like, you need to consolidate them all down into one.
And in the comics, that concept is perfect. Because you want to be able to keep using the villain forever.
Right.
And so it's okay to have a one-time victory, he comes back, you have another one-time victory, and that's that's like the business model. But in the movies,
where you want things to be more permanent,
what do you do with that?
But again, to me, it just makes all the movies leading up to, the Avengers seem less interesting because we know that nothing significant is going to happen to the villain because he's still going to be probably set up whatever his status quo is.
And totally why
it's just kind of filler.
Right. That's totally why it's smart in the movies up to this point in the MCU with Thanos for them to have him as a secondary villain, so primary villain because he's the guy behind the curtain, but they can beat somebody else. But that doesn't make him seem like less of a threat.
Right. Yeah. Positioning Kang as a new Thanos. I mean, the first thing I was leading up to saying is I appreciated his power level, even if it kind of got undercut at the end.
Yeah.
That seemed like he would be a worthy foe.
Yeah.
Although, again, he's just kind of like Kylo Ren, where people are like, so when he's fighting Rey in Rise of Skywalker, why doesn't he just do that force asleep thing again? Or freeze her in place? Like,
he's too strong now.
He's too powerful, and then he's not powerful enough, you know?
Yeah.
If he can just freeze people, why is he not going to be able to do that later in the movie when clearly in the Avengers you can't let him do that?
Yeah.
But maybe they all reconstitute the Infinity Stones.
I would give them an immunity. Love it if in the Avengers... Well,
they're just fighting an army of Kangs the way they always fight an army of things. It's just a bunch of... And you can take them all out.
Zombie Kangs just running.
You can take them all out with one punch, but there's just so many.
I was going to say, but that would be hilarious. Instead of Ultron, but you can't beat all of us, and they're just infinite Kang.
Right. Instead of Chitauri or Ultron drones, it's just a bunch of Kang.
Whoever's the new Tony Stark gets his nightmares being buried alive by Kang bodies. I would love it if the first time they fight Kang, he time freezes all of them, does what he came to do, whatever, maybe his goal is to steal something or something. He wins and just walks away, and it's like, that's how powerful he is. And they have to think of a clever plan.
Right. Which, again, I'm just saying, reform all the Infinity Stones to power us up to Kang's level.
Right.
It's a quest to go see, maybe they were destroyed. Anyway.
There are other powerful artifacts they could bring in from the comics. But my point being, don't just make it another Punch-Out fight. Come up with a clever plan.
Or what about this? They beat him. In part 1, they defeat him.
And then he's just like 4, 5, 6, they defeat him again.
And then he's just like, resets time. And they've unbeaten him. Maybe they even beat him again. He's just like, And it's suddenly
the whole movie is just the Doctor Strange scene.
Well, you only do it once or twice at the end.
Okay.
But just them being like, it goes back to the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
And they're just like, oh crap. How are we going to beat him? He can undo any victory that we have. So it's not how do we beat him, but how do we make it stick?
So the twist is, instead of it being the end of Infinity War where everybody's dead and you're like, oh crap, but that guy running walks and he gets to walk away, and if they lost half their people, the movie resets. They didn't lose anything. They just didn't win.
Right.
They're like, how
their win is undone, and he's going to get to keep trying. And maybe he overcomes the way they beat him the first time. And so they're like, we can just keep trying to beat him, but he can just keep on trying until he outwits all of our strategies and then walks all over us.
Right. I would love that.
Although
they would have to really drive it home that that's what he could do.
Once again, you just have the exact same hallucinations with Thanos. Then just go for the head so we can't go hot and push the button. with no head. You know,
Well, the solution to that is you have Thor do that right off the bat, and his axe breaks on his armor or something.
Right.
You know, like show that his armor's too powerful; they can't physically harm him.
right. And even if they beat him, he could just undo it. So yeah, what are you gonna do?
And in the comics, there is a main Kang that you follow. And you follow his story, and he like kills other versions of themselves, works with other versions of themselves. But it's kind of the same one that you're following at different points in his life, and you see a lot of that.
I did like that there was one Kang. He was in the foreground of the last shot of that sequence. Who looked like he was like a blue scroll or something. Who was like
Yeah, there was some
alien Kang, where it's like
Yeah.
in his timeline, maybe humans interbred with aliens, and that's how he.
Right, something along those lines. Yeah. Yeah, no, and again, like, I do love that there were all these different versions of Kang you see, but they don't all just look the same. All I'm saying is, I hope the next time we see Kangs, all the Kangs, they pick one to be the main one and focus on him, and don't just have him die off and be replaced by another one.
Well, I still think the one for this movie is dead.
Oh.
Like,
And I would appreciate that. I would appreciate if this was the main one.
Right.
And they think he's defeated.
and then he comes back.
Was back, and even after all that, he still wipes out all the other Kangs, and yeah.
Because he was just pulled into the heart of a power source.
Right.
He could say that just made me more powerful. Who knows how that power source
And turns his face actually blue.
Yeah.
And from that, I think.
But, like, also, the one in Loki told us that all the Kangs were fighting and it was destroying universes and everything. These guys seem to be getting along pretty well.
They're not at that point yet. So that's what was happening. The Kangs were fighting. There's a multiversal war. He stopped that. Then they killed him, and he said, if you kill me, the same thing's going to happen again. Now we're seeing it start to happen again. We're seeing these Kangs start first.
I wonder if they all unified up to band against this Kang the Kong.
This guy was describing that. This guy, the main Kang in this movie, was describing it. He was like, when he was saying why they needed him to fight the other Kangs, he was like, they started fighting each other, so I decided to take charge and like wipe out everybody. So he kind of escalated the conflict, but before that, they were fighting across the universe.
Maybe they're still in a temporary state of truce after.
Right.
And
because they're the ones who sent him.
That's what Avengers got to deal with, the war actually breaking out, and they're having to deal with multiverse destruction, various Kangs.
And that would, an interesting take would be, rather than Avengers versus the Kangs, or any Kang, it's all those Kangs versus this one Kang, and the Avengers are caught in the middle.
Right.
What do they do about the situation?
Right.
Yeah.
Or, again, all those Kangs versus each other, and they're just trying to figure out how to stop the universe from ending in the crossfire.
Yeah. Anyway, I feel like I think a key component to making the Kang story work, ultimately, like whenever the last one is that Kang's done, it's the end of phase 7, whatever it's going to be.
Right.
This is the last Kang fight. It's the end game with Thanos. They gotta have Reed Richards be the guy. He's the only guy smart enough to have a smart Kang. And if you don't do that, then it's just like, who can punch hardest? Who's Thor and Hulk in this, you know?
Right.
And that's boring because we've seen that. So
what I will say, as much as I feel like the setup of Kang potentially just being a jack in the box.
Yeah.
You know, defeated, he pops back up, defeated, really undercuts his menace. The thing that I started this whole branch of conversation to say was, I appreciated his power level, except where it was undercut. And I do think, at the very least, if he is the new Thanos, if he is the new big bad, he brings it performance-wise. He has the presence to pull that off. Like his slightly unhinged, villain performance was top-notch, and it is sufficient to be a worthy successor of giving a back job.
Brolin, go toe to toe.
He's got the presence to pull it off. Like they give him the right.
And I love that feeling that he's like when he's talking with Janet and actually talking with Ant-Man, he's like he desperately wants to get out of here. Coggrade, he's got to hold back. He's like holding it back to try to stay calm because he's got to deal with these little people. You know, and it's like that's how he sees the world.
So the Bill Murray scene, I think, is about the only thing we sort of skipped over.
Because it's completely irrelevant to everything, and
Yeah,
it was just so they could have Bill Murray in the trailer briefs.
Pretty much.
2 seconds.
they do some poetic justice. Oh, he eats those things. Let's see how he likes it. Which is like,
That's his arc.
okay, I guess.
That's his arc. He survived, and we learned his lesson.
Right.
Now, all I want is for him to meet up with the guy from Thor Ragnarok.
Oh, the
Grand
Grandmaster, Jeff Goldblum.
Jeff Goldblum. All I want is for him to survive and have these 2 eccentric old men meet up in another movie, having survived being minor villains.
Although I have to say, Bill Murray was a lot less eccentric here than he usually is.
Yeah, he was like, he toned it down from his actual personality.
Right.
Which is surprising considering he was dressed eccentrically and the character could have been eccentric.
Right.
Like, why?
Well, I mean, maybe they thought, we've already done that with Jeff Goldblum, let's go a different direction.
He was almost threatening. Like, he was almost like a serious character.
Yeah, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But he is also the crazily dressed goofball character that has a big history as a major player in this realm, played by a cameoing the older popular actor from the 80s whose ship they steal for the rest of the movie.
So it's literally
the same like role. And there's even something kind of creepy and icky about his ship.
If they hung around a little longer, you would have heard about the tournaments he hosts every...
Right. It's a tie. The MCU is repeating itself a bit at times.
They do know a good formula.
And to be fair, with this many movies, how can it not? Yeah, that whole scene was pretty much nothing.
It very easily could have been cut out. I feel like it could have just been, they go in the bar, she says, here's my contact, you cut away, imply a conversation happened, they got the information they needed.
Since she didn't tell them about anything there anyway.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And
then they fly away.
Then they fly away.
It was just a minor action scene.
Yeah.
That didn't necessarily...
Yeah, it's funny. If you literally just had, when they arrived in the quantum realm, or when they meet up with that caravan and on that flying thing, they're just flying to where Scott is, and she tells them on the back of that thing, and cut out every other plot point from there to them getting to the power source, or to her starting to tell her flashback, I should say. Like, nothing would change. Like, their plot is entirely pointless.
It was all set
From the moment they got transportation to the moment they rejoined Scott. It was just wheel spin.
Yeah, because they didn't get anything from Bill Murray.
No, they didn't.
Trying to think like he was trying to get something from them. He
Literally
tried to convince them.
Literally, if you had them just get on the back of that flying thing and her tell the flashback on the back of that flying thing, it would have been the
They
same.
needed the translator.
That's true.
Where else are you going to get
That literally anywhere.
Apparently they keep it in stock everywhere. How often do they get new people
Yeah, I know.
at a bar?
That is kind of weird.
They don't have children coming in there to get their first dose when they're born. And would kids naturally be able to?
Maybe, well,
Does everybody get this?
and here's the thing. He said it worked. As if this isn't something they usually do.
Okay.
So maybe everyone drinks the goo for a different reason, but he's like, hey, we can't understand these guys. Maybe if we give them the goo, that will have the side effects.
Herbal tea.
Right.
That also has the side effect of working on the trans.
That's the only thing that would make sense, I think, that they drink it for other reasons, but it just happens to have that side effect. And
another thing, just biologically, if this character doesn't have any holes, how does the goo come out? Is it from the outside of his body? He's made out of goo, and goo's coming off, rather than coming out.
Yeah.
But he seems like he has a solid membrane
And
around him.
why does he have an internal vacuum that can only be activated when holes that are never supposed to be in him are in him? Is he just a highly vacuum pressurized, being?
It's kind of part of the life cycle of that creature. At a certain point, they go through like a ceremony where they get punctured. Right. Plus, if he knew that was the thing he could do, he could have punctured himself. It didn't seem to hurt him.
Right.
At any point up to that, so he didn't know that was a thing that could happen.
Yeah.
Complete surprise.
There are so many questions. And one has to ask, does your understanding of language only last as long as the digestive process takes? Does the stuff just absorb directly into your body?
That would be a good out, because
Is
within
there
the
one
street world, can they now understand every language in existence, or
is
enough time passed?
is that, and that's the thing, is it a universal translator, or does it hook into some sort of shared highlight of the quantum realm, and the only reason they're all speaking the same language is because they're speaking, like, they could probably understand the quantum realm language, but that only works because everyone's linked in the first place.
Or is everyone in the quantum realm speaking the same language, or are they all speaking their own unique languages, and everybody has to take this good at a certain point to understand each other?
Right, but that's the thing. Unless people are coming in from the outside, they would eventually all be speaking the same language, because after generations,
Forget.
where would their separate languages be from? You know what I mean? They'd just be speaking the standard language.
Yeah. Well, that's like the question of in Star Trek, if you're raised on the universal translator, what language are you actually speaking?
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm betting they're gonna, either one way or another, it's gonna end up being, this is a treatment that they got that only works in the quantum realm, so that next time they go back, it'll continue to work, but in the real world, it doesn't have any effect.
Right.
I'm going to say permanent. I would say, yeah, it's a parasite didn't have it.
Which does happen in a lot of sci-fi things. Just do this once and you're affected forever. So the quantum storm, like I said, was cool.
Yeah.
Conceptually, I liked how they were doing it with Janet, and there was just a stream of flight pallets.
Yeah. And it gave them a really cool visual way of like depicting Ant-Man as a bunch of ants climbing on top of each other. And then I like at the end when it resolves, they're showing that all the Ant-Man would have made this decision, and all the Janets, like, they're coming together. Regardless of all the splits that they had up to that point, they all converge. This is the choice they all make together.
Conceptually, I didn't get that. I was like, why did it all...
Either that or they just left the area of effect.
Right, yeah. That's what I thought. But I like the idea that this is the choice that those characters would always make. That is actually a good kind of visual poetry.
Yeah.
It is interesting, the idea that power source is being destroyed because it is being shrunk at inconsistent rates in the same way that Darren was, and that's why he's MODOK, you know.
But he got shrunk inconsistently as a super. Nothing else that they use the pucks on ever shrinks inconsistently.
Well, true, but I don't know if they've ever used anything else where they had multiple pucks at once.
Okay, fair enough.
So that was an interesting effect, and the idea that you could fix it just by resynchronizing it. Frankly, I just think that would let it correctly explode. Like, correctly detonate, because there's no way it should be in perfect working order when you resolve that. But oh well, comic book movie.
And then Janet comes in, and Janet knows nothing about what's going on. Scott just says, let's do this or whatever, and they do it. She helps him because, I guess, just because he's saying to, but she doesn't know what's going on, right? Like, at that point in the movie, she just fires her because he is.
True. I assume maybe she got from Janet's, we need to keep it out of his hands, that, let's shrink it and get it away from here.
Why not leave it broken, which is what Janet did to get it out of his hands? Why wouldn't she say, no, Scott, we can't do that?
Yeah, that is a very good point. Because she didn't know that Cassie was at stake.
Yeah, exactly. And then after that, when they have the device, she doesn't want to turn it over.
Well, here's the thing. The more you're in there, the more your mind is going. So she just kind of forgot by that point what her
Sure. Yeah.
It's kind of like she's just kind of oxygen deprivation. Yeah. She's like, Scott said do this? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then when she gets out, she's like, oh, shoot, why did I do that? I was not thinking straight.
All right. And so then they get out. They got the thing. Ken wants it. He's like, give it to me. And Scott's like, you gotta release Cassie first. And then Ken becomes an idiot for a moment and breaks his promise. Because if he just released Cassie, Scott probably would have given it to him.
But then he also pulls it away.
But only because he was already refusing to hand it over.
But he didn't even need to, if he was planning to break his promise, why even ask for it in the first place? Why not just take it?
Well, it shouldn't be nice. He's a nice guy.
Yes, he knows!
It's just, the whole thing with the dynamic was weird. And then later, Scott's like, you broke your promise. So why is he keeping Cassie at that point? What does he hope to use her for? If he releases her, then Scott's got a lot less reason to come after him so hard, and he should know that as a tactician. And it's like,
right.
What's going through? Why is he making this decision?
Well, I mean, Cassie was still his prisoner.
Yeah. Is he hoping to use her?
But hadn't she already...
She'd already escaped?
No.
But
He was having her transferred somewhere when she broke out, so maybe he was bringing her to execute her.
Maybe. But he said she'll be fine without you, implying that he was just going to keep her prisoner.
Or, you know what? I think what he was maybe going to do is kill her in front of Janet, because it's her granddaughter. And he wanted Janet to suffer.
Maybe.
So I think he was just having her brought up there when she escaped, but he was probably going to execute her in front of Janet, because it's just like, look, you screwed me over and I've been stuck here for years. The least I can do is make you suffer as much as possible, and that's how we're going to do it. That's going to be my...
Okay. All right. We'll go with that. He's just kind of a jerk about it.
It is also really dumb of him to be like, you left me out here to die. It's like, first of all, no, she didn't. You were fine last she saw you. She just left you out here to be stuck here.
It just feels like death to him.
And then he's like, let's see how they do it. It's like, but none of them were fatally injured except maybe Hank in the crash that he didn't know about. You know what I mean? Like, it feels very weird to just be like, do the cliche, I'll finish you off later when he has the mercy.
Right.
What? Why? He had no reason to think they were dying. Like, what would he expect except them to come after it?
Yeah.
Like, it made very little sense.
Classic villain mistake.
And none of them, until they're maybe giants at the end, ever use their ability. Like when Cassie shrinks the one guy down, or here, when he has that trump, no one ever just kind of steps on them, which would be very unheroic.
A little too gruesome.
Yes.
Which I expected her to do for the little guy. She's running towards him.
Right.
Kicks him.
And then she kicks him. But to keep it PG-13 and keep her the hero, and I appreciate that, I'm just saying tactically, why would Kang not do that?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Why would he not?
Right.
And again, he wants her to suffer. Why not just step on her daughter right in front of her?
He talks a lot about how many Avengers he killed, but we haven't seen it.
Yeah. I expected him to maybe at least do a thing like, I promised you that you would get home, so I'm going to spare them to keep my promise. It just felt like that was a big thing that they didn't pay off.
Yeah.
And then, he breaks the other promise for no reason.
I think he feels...
And brings out his own downfall because of it. But I thought they were going to do something at least with, I feel indebted to Janet, so despite all the trouble you've caused, I'll give you this.
Yeah.
But now I'm going to go kill you for all the trouble you caused. But, I'm going to spare your loved ones this once for sleep. But they didn't. It just felt like a lot of things they set up and didn't properly pay off with you.
Yeah.
And his relationship with Janet. I thought they were even going to say what he's like, what did you see? And she's like, a monster. I thought she was going to describe all those things. And he'd be like, but here's the thing. I haven't done any of those yet. Like, you didn't give me a chance to explain. You exiled me when I hadn't done, like, touching my chair, show you all of the past and the future. But you exiled me here for a crime I hadn't committed, and you turned me into that. I am this way because you rationally stranded me here instead of hearing me out.
That's a good Kang setup.
Yeah!
That's a good Kang setup. That could have been a whole different movie. And in a lot of ways, the comics do something similar where Kang makes Kang into Kang, sort of future Kang.
Right.
Does that to past Kang, where past Kang would have been good, and it's like a cycle. And they could have done that with Jen.
The chair let you see my entire time stream, but you were the one that brought it about by acting in that moment. Like, you made me the conqueror that destroys worlds.
Yeah.
He could have been exiled because they saw the potential for him to be that, but he hadn't been that yet. Right. And then Janet realizes, I screwed up by acting rashly. And,
Wow. And it could have had an arc.
Yeah! And he could have had an arc, and he'd be like, I'm not sure. Do I hate you for doing this to me? Or am I indebted to you for bringing me my full potential?
We fixed Sandman.
We fixed Sandman. Too bad it's not real.
No. It will never be.
I kept expecting them to do something with one of these things, right? They never did.
Right.
But having him walk away with her just felt so like they couldn't think of a reason why he didn't just kill everybody, so they didn't even bother. They just had him walk away, and it felt very unnatural to the story. Like,
on top of that, this is a tiny nitpick, but villains gotta stop keeping their main prisoners with them in the command center. Put them in the jail cell.
Although she didn't actually do anything that I can recall
to
actually help the resistance at that point. She was completely useless
Until towards Brett of the
she just happened to be there to open the portal.
Exactly.
Afterward, but she made no contribution to the fight. I did think it was funny when Cassie was being marched by the guards and we started seeing their reflections in the floor and it panned up. And it's like, oh, she's getting the Loki walk. Usually we see the villain being led captive like this. It's interesting to see one of our heroes get that shot.
Yeah.
They did it. Well, I guess Doctor Strange kind of did too in Multiverse of Madness. A lot of heroes get taken prisoners lately.
Yeah.
And then you just got the final fight. I have to say, I did love just Kaiju Ant-Man. And him just being like, you broke your word, and wrecking everything. That is probably my favorite Ant-Man moment of all of the movies.
They got a little bigger each time.
Yeah. But I love that he was just the ultimate big, was him, out to, just like the card said, you'll burn down the world to save your child, and just out and taking Kang to task.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have done this. Bam! If you had kept your word. Bam! Just annihilating everything while chewing the guy out. This is on you for being dishonorable, because if you don't keep your word, what are you? That was his most bad A moment.
Yeah. And then is the strategy to get through the force field of just using the kinetic momentum. You just basically hit the force field hard enough that the internal components hit against each other.
And break. Yeah, that was pretty good.
Just get enough momentum behind it.
So that was all very satisfying.
Yeah.
The cavalry coming in with the resistance was a little cliche. They've done stuff like that a lot of times. It was fine, but I wasn't super excited by it. But Ant-Man just showing up and starting to wreck things as the monologues, that I was excited. That got me pumped.
Yeah. No, somebody needs to re-edit the scene of the asteroid up with the music from Two Towers.
Right.
The army coming over the
Twine coming on the dog.
And the lens flare behind the broken wreckage where the ants come through.
But just put him up on a white horse,
Slow everything down, play the music.
That would be great.
And then him Finn walks up, and he just walks up and just stands there, doesn't say anything. I was waiting for a line, like a snap one-liner. Somebody can run the AI video of that now, so he just walks up and ants.
Well, I was just waiting. So the three of them are standing there, and Kang is seeing this tide of ants ruin everything he's created, destroy all his armies, coming toward him, starting to approach him. Hank just casually walks up. If I was Kang, I would have just been like, kill you all for doing this, then I'll face the ants.
Wait, where's the beams? Where's the laser beams?
I expected him to kill Hank for doing this to him, get some revenge.
But
they were all standing right there.
I expected the opposite at that point. He is a smart guy. He is not stupid. He's Kang. Why doesn't he go to his pod and escape?
Right. I can bring my army, but at least I can go myself.
He doesn't need it. He can make a new one. He
Yeah.
just wants to get out of here. That's his motivation. It's his goal to get out of here.
I expected that too. Yeah. Just leave.
Just leave.
Or start using his beams against the airs. Why does he immediately go into defense mode when he was literally cutting swaths through armies?
Exactly.
Do the same thing to the onrushing tide of hands, especially because they're approaching against a bridge, I think. You got a bottleneck. You could even have had him doing that, but then you see the ants have gone down the wall on the other side.
Yeah, make it at least, you gotta make the work for it.
Right.
And make the good guys work for it. They keep us win.
I wish we'd written this movie. We've got so many better ideas.
We script consultants
Yeah.
on Ant-Man 4.
I feel like no movie since Generations have I come up with this many ideas that I think could objectively fix the movie.
Yep. Yeah.
And yeah, just him suddenly being overpowered. Again, when he was getting slammed into walls by kaiju and killing dozens of people in a second, it feels a little like, why is he suddenly so powerless against them now? And we also, I think twice, saw him in Janet's flashbacks go run into a big shockwave that killed everything around him, vaporized it. I was expecting him to do that to the ants. What? We've literally shown that he has a dispersed enemies he's surrounded by power. Why doesn't he use it? And the ending was, I mean, I honestly, I think we're gonna cut him in half with the portal, or just destroy the power source, and he's stuck there.
Without what was gonna go through the portal, I thought, okay, he's defeated. They had final battle in here, right? He's gonna end up in the real world, and they're gonna like lock him up or something,
right? Or again, they just from the portal shoot his thing, and he's like, no, and now there's no power source to get him out of there, and he's stuck in the ruins of his empire, with the rebellion approaching, or something, and instead they have him sucked into his power source, which is not a thing they even remotely hinted that it could do.
The next time we see him, he's going to be inside that power source with about 1,000 other Kang leads up exactly the same, all working together, all his quantum splits.
Right.
It was Precon or whatever it was called, working together to get out of there.
I thought I needed an army of others. I only needed an army of me.
They all form up and do a big mech.
That's only the size of the original Kang. That's how he's permanently an inch tall, but he's now a collective of Kangs at human size.
This is disturbing comic book character idea.
Well, there was Spiders Man, which was
exactly
the culture of the swarm of spiders that ate Peter Parker, but gained his personality and think they're Peter Parker, but it's really just a swarm of spiders inside a spider.
Spiders Man, but they're actually little people.
Right.
It's People's Man.
It's People's Man.
I'm People's Man. The man of the people.
People's Man in the Conqueror, because also Ken.
Well, Ken has all these different personas in the comics. One of them is People's Man.
Right. People's. Now, see, that sounds better. It sounds like he's really popular. I'm the People's Man.
He's the king that fights for the people.
And everyone's like, oh, he's like the popular choice in elections? He's like, no, he's made of just tiny copies of himself.
He's got good PR. So.
Right, but he's got good PR. Good branding. I think we have exhaustively covered everything in this movie.
I think we have.
I feel like with Doctor Strange, we just kind of complained about like thematic stuff.
Yeah.
And with Spider-Man, we just kind of hit the high points. But this movie felt like it was non-substantive enough that we could cover everything.
You're right. We exhaustively dissected it.
Because it was just a set of set pieces.
It's not a lot more to talk about unless we wanted to get in depth with like music or design or something. With design, you need like an overarching personality for the location, and that's what it's lacking. And and Guardians being the first had that. They had that. Like nowhere the location has its personality, and the different planets feel like they each have their own personality. And now that every location feels like those locations, you lose that. You don't have that anymore.
And honestly, I feel like most of their most unique ideas were all in the opening scene. You have the sky with the vortices.
Which you do see later on. They just avoid showing it for most of it.
Yeah. The first scene for Janet in the beginning, the first scene for Scott and Cassie, and the first scene for Cassie, Janet, and Hank each had some unique quantum stuff.
Yeah.
But after that, after each of those three scenes, they just didn't do anything with the location. It felt a little wasted. Like they couldn't maintain the uniqueness of it.
Right. That's what you get. That's what you get for setting a whole movie in a place you made up that has no basis in reality whatsoever. And it's not even like an alien planet that has no basis in reality, because that you can base on Earth. And you can say, oh, this is a forest planet. It's like, no, this has to be different. And it has to be like a specific thing. It has to be the quantum realm. It has to fit all these in this category. And you gotta do that for 2 hours with no breaks, nonstop. Like, maybe don't set the whole entire movie there. Maybe that was a mistake. Make it special. Set like half an hour to an hour of the movie there. Make it special, then you leave.
It doesn't live up to its potential. It was not unentertaining.
No,
I enjoyed the first Ant-Man, maybe more than the second Ant-Man. I'd have to say again.
I would say so. The second Ant-Man, I mean, it's apples and oranges. It's completely different types of movies.
Right.
But even comparing it to like...
which again
the worst
is what the MCU does. Here's two movies that are like this, and then one is completely different.
Right.
I mean, Thor did it, Captain America arguably did it, because the third one wasn't really about Hydra. And it was big superhero team-ups there.
Yeah.
It wasn't Cap on his own. And now this did it. It's like, expect part 3 of the trilogy to be different. And Guardians 3, Someone's Gonna Die, that is its subtitle, is based on the marketing.
Guardians 3. One last.
Yeah, seriously. I have never seen a movie so much bank on its marketing telling you this movie is going to make you cry.
Hilarious.
If no one dies.
Because it's not just marketing. The directors come out and like basically stated it outright. Everybody involved says somebody's gonna die.
Like they're not even trying to
about it.
And the marketing just has this funeral tone.
Yeah.
Of like, all right, this is it. Like
that brilliant.
This is them at the Alamo getting ready to go out for one last charge, knowing they're
and wouldn't that be brilliant if they used that throughout the movie to pump up the stakes? You don't know who's gonna die. Everybody feels like they could die in every scene, and then they all make it through to the end, and you're like, what? Wait, what?
That would actually be a brilliant misdirect.
Yeah, like how involved would that get you in the plot?
But it also makes me wonder if this one is also going to be, the third one is very different, or be maybe the first MCU trilogy that actually maintains its tone all throughout. It is just funny that it's so like Ragnarok. It's like, okay, now let's take the trilogy to weird franchise place, drop most of the supporting characters. We're not going to see its ex-con friends, just like we're not going to see the 4 warriors except to very quickly die, or Jane Foster.
Right.
Let's have it be set in a weird alien location with a popular 80s old guy cameoing as
freshen it up.
It's weird how much this one does follow the Ragnarok thing, except with so much less substance. Because Ragnarok was really thematically meaty, and the characters arc around with Loki and everything. And this one felt like it followed it kind of a lot more hollowly, like all of the beats, but much less substance.
Can you imagine the parallel universe where Darren Cross is the emotional way of this movie? He's your through line, you know? He represents the past of the Ant-Man franchise.
Right.
And like a villain that he's had to face before, he has to come around and get the terms with. And instead of being this goofball, and he's like completely serious, but he looks exactly the same that he did in this movie, just a big face. But they keep trying to give him these heavy emotional lines.
When I was a businessman, I got lost in myself. Lost in my greed and the power, but he still does his giant
Oh, man. So back to the cake scene. So
I think we've officially run out of stuff to say. I mean,
all right. Well, I guess we'll see everybody next time for Indiana Jones 6 and the Crystal Kingdom.
The Dial of Destiny.
The Dial of... I really hope he doesn't dial.
Yeah, me too.
All right.
All right.